let me first introduce Stefano Valente, the author of the 2021 book that appeared with the Gruyter. He was trained as a classicist in Bologna, obtained his PhD in Florence, and started as a postdoc there, but then came to Hamburg in 2011, if I'm not mistaken, and has remained there since. So that's more than 10 years now that he has been attached to the University of Hamburg, which is also his current affiliation. Today, Stefano is the Arbeitsstellenleiter, the day-to-day project director is probably a good translation into English of a long-term research project funded by the Academy called Etymologica, which is centered on the Etymologicum Gudianum, but which transcends it and wants to study the structure, the dissemination, the interpretation of knowledge and knowledge transfer in Byzantium and beyond Byzantium in the form of lexicons in the broadest sense of the word. And at the end of this long-term project, which started in 2020, Stefano and his team will have produced a critical edition, both in print and online, with an English commentary of the Etymologicum Gudianum. Having briefly introduced his present function, his present role, I have immediately told you, what some of Stefano's main research interests are. That is Greek lexicography, critical editing, manuscript studies, paleography. You also see those interests articulated in the books that he published and which he edited, books on the anti-ethicist, books on lexicons of Plato by Timaeus the Sophist, both published with the Gruyter in the Sammlung griechischer und lateinischer Grammatiker. And you all know his name because he is one of the editors of the, 2-volume major work on griechisch-byzantinische Handschriftenforschung, 2 volumes that came out of the second to last, most recent paleography conference, which was organized in his institution. A last research interest that I will mention now of Stefano is central to the topic that he will be talking about today, which is Aristotle manuscripts, manuscript transmission and reception of Aristotle in Byzantium. I told you that since 2011, Stefano has been at the University of Hamburg. He came there with a Humboldt stipend and has since then obtained a number of projects, some of them from the DFG, centered on the Epitome physica of Nikephoros Blemmydes, which, if I'm not mistaken, in the end should lead to a critical edition of this book. This book, which is a manual of natural philosophy, which was written by Blemmydes and which was very popular in Byzantium, a popularity that has been articulated, of course, in a large number of manuscript copies. The book that Stefano will be presenting to us focuses on, especially the earliest stages in the manuscript transmission of this manual on natural philosophy written by Blemmydes. But I think he's in a better position to introduce this topic and this research. So I will hand over the microphone to him and give him the floor. So again, if you want to ask questions, please type them into the chat, and then I can read them out loud after Stefano's presentation. Stefano, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Reinhart, for your very kind presentation. I'd like to share my screen. Please let me know if everything is going right. Wonderful. And also thank you to the organizers, to Petros and to the other organizers of this wonderful festival, and to the opportunity that we have to present some of recent publications. I'd like to show in my presentation some of the main contents of my monograph on the manuscript transmission of this seminal treatise on natural philosophy, created for teaching and learning during the Nicene Empire and still read until the 19th century. The author is Nikephoros Blemmydes, a pivotal figure in culture and politics at the time of the Latin reign in Constantinople. Probably around the year 1237, he was appointed by the Emperor John III Ducas Vatasis to teach 5 promising young men. 2 of them were the future Emperor Theodore II Ducas Lascaris and the politician and historian Georgios Aphropolitis. Both for personal study and for use in teaching, Blemmydes composed an extensive philosophical compendium in 2 books. The title is Isagogiki Epitome, Introductive Epitome. This is a course book containing a straightforward presentation in the form of an epitomized commentary on logic in the first book, and on physics, meteorology, and astronomy in the second. During the last year of his life, that is in the 1260s, Blemmydes revised his own works in his monastery in Imathia, not far from Ephesus. As Blemmydes states in the second book of his autobiographic account, he looks back at his achievement, once again highlighted the importance this teaching work has also had for his own learning. The 2 books on logic and natural philosophy later became a sort of reference work. As far as the Epitome Physica is concerned, Blemmydes revisited and reworked material originating primarily from Aristotle and his late antique commentators. Astronomic details are also taken from the Stoic Cleomedes. As a new research result, I was able to trace the use of treatises by many scholars such as Galen, John of Damascus, Zelos, and Simeon Seth. Concerning the material dissemination of the text, more than 120 manuscripts of the Epitome Physica dating from the late 13th to the 19th century survive. And when I started to investigate the manuscript tradition of this difficult and engaging treatise, I could only guess how many challenges this would pose. The investigation of the manuscript transmission of the Epitome Physica was an exciting journey through the centuries and across many places in company of many scribes and scholars, some of them known, some still anonymous. For the first time ever, more than 60 Greek manuscripts of this treatise, dating up to the 16th century, have been systematically studied. Thanks to a combination of philology and paleography, I could assess their mutual relationship and genealogy. The results are now collected in this book in German language. This is divided into 2 parts. In the first one, I describe the different steps of the textual and manuscript transmission of this treatise. A peculiarity of the Epitome Physica is a manuscript dating to the very end of the 13th century and now kept in the Vatican Library, Vaticanus Graecus 434. This preserves a copy of the first version of the treatise. Wolfgang Lackner demonstrated in 1982 that the text in this manuscript shows a closer adherence to the wording of the sources and is thus decisive to the Quellenforschung. I was able to confirm his assertion and extend his results, especially where Blemmydes' latest revision is concerned. I also managed to isolate a small group of manuscripts representing an intermediate textual stage. I call this group Family Alpha. Philological details offer decisive evidence for this. I will not go into details right now. In the subsequent chapters, I try to classify single manuscripts or groups of them according to their value for the reconstruction of the text of the final version as Blemmydes released it. Every manuscript has a story to tell, and in each chapter you can find plenty of them. For instance, let me show you the beginning of the text in one of the oldest manuscripts, if not the oldest one, of the final version of the text. The Laurentianus Pluteus 8716 not only preserved the text in excellent shape, but it also is also the only independent manuscript that transmits the correct drawing of the astrologic diagram added by Blemmydes when completing his final revision. I'd also like to draw attention to this case. There are two of the oldest and most important manuscripts, both independent one from the other, and transmitting a rich corpus of Blemmydes' treatise, independent for what the core text is concerned, or the original core text is concerned. They are the Alcamensis Graecus 71, dating to the end of the 13th century and now preserved at the Bodleian Library in Oxford, and the Monacensis Graecus 225 from the first half of the 14th century, preserved in the State Library of Munich. In the early 15th century, they are located on Crete. At that time, the Alcamensis belonged to the private library of the scholar and scribe Andronikos Kallistos. It was damaged and quite a few folios had been lost. On the island, Kallistos got access to the actual Monacensis and restored the missing text of his own manuscript before traveling to Italy. One of the most evident proofs of this misreading is a misreading in the Monacensis. The last line you see here on this folio, in this last line is described as skipped a line, and he added it by using a sign. Kallistos, while copying the Monacensis, just ignored the signs and copied the text as it was, so he misplaced a sentence. Later on, the Alcamensis became part of the library of the Italian scholar and humanist Giorgio Valla. He translated the Greek text of Blemmydes' treatises they are contained in the Alcamensis, and inserted them anonymously into his encyclopedic work, De Expectendis et Fugiendis Rebus opus. Thus, he contributed to the dissemination of Blemmydes' ideas during the early Renaissance, although anonymously. Another interesting and conspicuous group of manuscripts is represented by what I call the Cypriotic family. This is a group of 5 manuscripts linked to the island of Cyprus and dating to the early 14th century. One of these manuscripts, the Laurentianus Pluteus 8631, was later brought to the Terra d'Otranto in southern Italy. There, it generated an even broader family of at least 8 manuscripts, starting with the Vaticanus Barbarianus Graecus 226. This group of manuscripts attests the strong interest in Blemmydes' treatise during the late 15th, early 16th century in the Salento region, and from there in the Italian Renaissance. The second part of the book contains detailed descriptions of the Greek manuscripts I have investigated. The structure of this section is inspired by the pivotal reference work Aristoteles Graecus, published in 1976. I moved this information to their own section to avoid overloading the single chapters of the first part with too much information on material and textual detail, and also to keep all relevant information for every single written artifact together. Most of these descriptions are based on autoptic investigation of each manuscript. For instance, you see the description of Vaticanus Barbenianus Graecus 226, which I already mentioned. These Untersuchungen can be read in different ways. Some readers may be interested in the general picture of the manuscript transmission or of some of the manuscript families. Others will hopefully find the detailed description of the manuscript of some used. Some may also read these researches from the beginning to the end, as I conceived them. To me, this book constitutes the necessary research basis for a first critical edition of the text I'm currently finalizing, thanks to the Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft. But it is another story for a future issue of this book festival. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to questions.